Aloha and welcome to E Hana Kako. It's a weekly program that we do on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. I'm Keli'i Akina, president of the Grassroot Institute, and I'm delighted today to have a friend joining us. Over the past year, we have done several programs dealing with the issue of Hawaiian sovereignty and the role of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs and the Department of Interior of the federal government. And we've had trustees from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs on this program. We've had legislators, various community experts. Today, I'm pleased to say that we have a Hawaiian activist who's joining us. And I'm considering this a very special time because this gentleman and I have gotten to know each other over the past couple of years, first at a distance in terms of reading things about each other, then actually doing what we call kuka kuka, or talking with each other and understanding each other. And I have to say this, many of the things that we believe as in my organization, libertarians and conservatives, overlap some of the efforts that are being made by Hawaiian sovereignty activists. And today we're going to talk a little bit about that area of overlapping. That's not to say we don't have differences, indeed we do, but I think what's more fascinating is the ways in which people from all backgrounds can work together here in Hawaii to make a better state. And somebody working toward that end is a man named Kealii Makekau. But let me tell you this first. You need to know that our names are actually different, although they're related. I'm Keli'i Akina, K-E-L-I-I, and sometimes people call me Kealii, but my gentleman friend today is Kealii Makekau, and Kealii is a noble name. It means the king and the ruler. So the house behind us we see, I think, is actually his residence. Welcome, Kealii.
One can only wonder wish, right?
Aloha mai.
Aloha mai.
So glad you're here today.
Nice to have you.
You know, you have been standing for the cause of the Native Hawaiian people for many, many years, and you're outspoken, to say the least.
Yes.
You're well known for that, but at the very least, people know you're authentic in what you say. And what I wanted to do at the very outset here is ask you, Kealii, what does it mean to you in this day and age to be a Native Hawaiian?
I think today, the definition of Native Hawaiian, first of all, everybody wants to know, or you cite your definitions as how it is, other than giving a general sort of blasé and everything like that. The term Hawaiian to me was actually one that I go back into time. It was crafted, it was made, it was identified because, as you well know, as the building behind us represents, this one island place was actually an independent nation. So its place or its designation or its national character had to be identified to the rest of the world, just as how the United States is. And its people go around the world, thus Americans representing their nation. The word Hawaiian to me was crafted out of that, and the people, or the citizenry, the many ethnic people who comprised that country were thus identified as Hawaiians. As we come to see today, after the overthrow and then the subsequent the state vote and whatnot, we became Americans. I believe that word was pretty much carried over with it, and there's actually some confusion on it because a lot of people will ask you, like, you know, hey, what's your nationality? And I've always been baffled with that question, because I'm like, is this a trick question? Are you with immigration services or something? You know, because then they go, no, why? I'm like, because you're asking me my citizenship. No, I'm asking you, sir, you're asking me what my ethnicity is, what parts of the country come up. So first and foremost, I would be a United States citizen. Second, more, if you want to know my ethnicities, I can bring up the nationalities in which they're derived from. So it would be Native Hawaiian, Norwegian, German, and Scotch, and so on.
Well, you know, I'm glad you said that, because this is a point in which we have something in common here. We recognize that any term can mean multiple things.
Right.
And when one says Hawaiian, one can be referring to citizenship in a sovereign kingdom, as Hawaii was up to 1893, or we could be talking about a bloodline and an ethnicity. And I think you and I have had this conversation before that it's possible to be proud of one's ethnicity and one's multiple ethnicities, as you've said. I'm Hawaiian and I'm Chinese, and at the same time say I'm proud to be an American citizen. Would you feel the same way?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, that it is what it is. You know, people always today, and especially with the sovereignty movement, now you see a lot of complex issues where people are identifying in various ways. And I've always explained it to people. I can understand the passion, the reason in which my fellow friends, cohorts, and even those that I know in the movement are choosing to identify them. And they have that right to identify themselves. I choose not to necessarily go down the path because, for one, I live in today's terms. I would then say, this is where the cards lie for me and whatnot. But my ideology, my beliefs will then take you to another place in which I would like to promote or then discuss about, thus incurring, say, the movement in particular.
You know, and I think that was well put, because you talked about past and present. You said your ideology, your beliefs come from another place, which I assume would be the past. But you say you live in today's world, and I think that's part of the problem you and I are trying to solve. How do we take the heritage that we have, and multiple people of multiple ethnicities have, the heritage we have historically, ethnically, and how do we move into the future? Now, let me ask you about something that's been going on recently. Everyone, I think, here in Hawaii is aware that the Department of Interior has been here in the state of Hawaii, that quite recently they made it known that they had been drafting rules to recognize Native Hawaiians, quote unquote, as a tribe. And as a tribe, they would then be qualified to become a Native American Indian tribe.
Domestic dependent nation.
That's
yes.
right, with the rights and privileges of Native American Indian tribes and so forth. And in order to test out those rules, bring them before the public, the Department of Interior has begun a series of hearings. And they've just finished up the hearings here in Hawaii. You and I saw each other at the very first of these hearings.
Yes.
You probably went to some other hearings as well.
One, yes.
And what is your thought about this move of the federal government that's being courted by the Office of Hawaiian Affairs and by the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, this move to create a Hawaiian tribe as one of the Native American Indian tribes?
Well, first and foremost, when you're dealing with the ramifications of the overthrow and the simplistic legal aspect of it, is totally preposterous. What's going on today. Native Hawaiians, as we both know, or the citizenry for that matter, for the Hawaiian Kingdom, was never a tribe. It was its own sovereign, independent nation. So that's what the apology bill in particular is what this DOI measure has been following up on, is going, once again, recalling for the reconciliation efforts here. However, if they are targeting, the state of Hawaii now has intervened and saying that the way to target or spearhead this reconciliation is if only the Native Hawaiians have it. And I believe we know this. When the country was lost or put into exile, so to speak, a specific race of people did not get injured.
Let me dwell on that for a moment with you. Basically, you're saying that if we go back to the end of the Hawaiian Kingdom as it was known in 1893, that we're not going to find a tribe.
Oh, no.
We're going to find a citizenship of people of multiple ethnicities.
An international body politic.
So, and who were they? I know they were the Japanese, they were the Chinese, they were Hawaiians, of course, they were Caucasians, they were the Portuguese. In fact, you know, most of the ethnic groups that are here today had some kind of foothold back then. They were citizens. And the reason I'm pausing here is this, because I think sometimes a lot of people lump together all the activists who are involved in self-determination for the Hawaiian people. And a lot of times we think all the activists believe that we've got to give everything back to a single ethnic tribe. And what you're saying is there wasn't such a tribe, and you don't hold that view.
No. The nation, or what today, how they categorize in the terminology, a nation state is an independent nation, a free, open country character whose national character is reflected by its people. Back then, we know it was very well, unfortunately, the Hawaiian or the Kanaka people were basically, their numbers had dwindled off. The leadership of that time, the monarchy, the ali'i, recognized that the numbers had gone off and you still had an island chain that was still there, not operating to its fullest. Thus, the plea went to other treaty partnered countries to say, we would like to know if you would like to submit labor relations or other type of agreements where perhaps people not satisfied with your country or looking for other betterment entitlements could come to our country, possibly to work, make money, to do other prosperous things. And in that dwelling, a lot of them stayed. They expatriated from their country and they became naturalized and were the same equivalent standing as Kanaka people.
Well, I'm glad you pointed that out. In fact, one ethnic group in particular, the Japanese, came from a land in which many of them were feudal serfs on the land.
Yes.
They were tied to the land, working for the lords of the land, and they came to Hawaii, and Queen Liliuokalani actually protected them. When the Emperor of Japan wanted to extradite them, she intervened,
Yes.
and for that reason, they have been loyal citizens to this realm. ever since. And a lot of people don't realize that even some of that loyalty that the Japanese felt during World War II was because these Japanese had long roots in which they were able to say, we are equal citizens here. But to go back to that question I was asking you about the Department of Interior and the federal government, so you disapprove of the efforts to get the Hawaiian people named an Indian tribe, even though there's so many so-called benefits of that. Would there be negative aspects to, and what would they be?
The false hopes that first they promote.
False hopes, I like that.
The false hopes that they put out first, and that this government-to-government relationship is how their propaganda is that it provides a shield, that somehow the entitlements and also things like Keli'i trust will be secured, free from prosecution from those use things like the 14th Amendment, 15th Amendment challenges from the Constitution of the United States against these programs, because Hawaii's political status is at arrest right now.
So what you're saying is that the argument that we need to have Hawaiians named a native Indian tribe is necessary to protect any federal entitlements. You're saying that's a false argument.
That's the false hope, right?
And in fact, there's nothing. They don't have anything to do with each other, do they?
Not necessarily, because actually, when you look back at the recent court dates, there have been legislative as well as judicial actions against it.
Okay.
And the state has prevailed. I mean, the court. I mean, they have prevailed. The Kamehameha settled. I mean, so forth. The settled. Yamasaki prevailed. So when I look at them, I'm like, where are these lawsuits that you're complaining?
You're also talking about the Keli'i Trust, by which we mean organizations that have funds for Hawaiians that were set apart, such as the Kamehameha Schools.
The biggest one, there you go.
That's the largest, the Lili'uokalani Trust.
Lunalilo,
Queen Emma. And you're saying that a lot of people have the scare tactic of saying that unless we get the Hawaiians named a Native American tribe, Hawaiians are going to lose all of those things. But I thought Kamehameha was a private trust, and you can't.
Still is a private trust.
Absolutely. So this is not about government entitlements whatsoever.
No.
Isn't that interesting?
It's a move, a crafted move, but what I've been outspoken in saying is that it's a move by the Democratic Party to try and initiate a reconciliation of their own with the federal government by trying to solve the overthrow issue by saying once and for all, the people have come to a consensus, they're over it, and they wish to receive the status as the Indians, Native Americans have.
Well, we're going to take a quick break here. When I come back, I want to shift from the effort to get recognition from the federal government as a native tribe to the state's own efforts, Act 195, the Native Hawaiian role, because that's going on here in the state of Hawaii, and I'd love to hear your views about it. My guest today is Kealii Makekau. He's a Hawaiian activist who cares passionately for the Hawaiian people, but is looking for solutions as to how we can live together with all people here in the state of Hawaii going forward into the future. And I think you're going to find the things that he has to say fascinating. You're going to find that in many ways, regardless of your own background politically, there may be many things that he's saying that you might agree with. I'm Keli'i Akina, president of the Grassroots Institute. We're on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. This is Ehana Kako, which means let's work together. We'll be right back after this.
Okay, this is ThinkTech, and one of our favorite shows is Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy. And it goes 4 to 5 every Wednesday right here from ThinkTech in Pioneer Plaza at the core of downtown Honolulu. And my co-host is Ray Starling from Hawaii Energy. Ray, do you like the show?
I love the show. It's great to see all the new people coming in with new ideas about how to save energy, get us off of fossil fuel, and that's what it's all about. So Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy. See us on Wednesday afternoons at 4 o'clock.
I knew he'd say that. Thanks, Ray.
Aloha and welcome back to Ehana Kako, a weekly program on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. I'm Kealii Akina, president of the Grassroots Institute. My guest today, Kealii Makekau, is an expert in understanding the relationship between Hawaiian activism and the state government and federal government. And I'm going to dive right in now and ask him about something that has recently gone on. Kealii, we were talking about the efforts for federal recognition, which you know since the 1990 began with the Akaka Bill. and I believe most of our viewers here, even across the world, may have some idea that the Akaka Bill was an attempt to go to Congress in order to get the federal government to acknowledge a government-to-government relationship with Native Hawaiians on the level of an Indian tribe. But that failed, and with the passing away of Senator Inouye, the retirement of Senator Akaka, that has just stalled in Congress. Now today we were talking about how the Department of the Interior, through executive action by President Obama, is also looking into, or at least is being courted by many Hawaiian groups to provide federal recognition. I want to shift gear. In light of the failure of the Akaka Bill, the state of Hawaii decided to go to work all by itself.
Absolutely.
Unilaterally. If the federal government wasn't going to acknowledge Hawaiians as a government, then, well, why not have the state of Hawaii by fiat create a government? And that was in 2011, Act 195 of Session 2011-2012, which said there shall be a Native Hawaiian Roll Commission. And this commission shall go out and enroll the names of people who will become citizens of this new sovereign entity. They will be qualified by having Hawaiian blood, as well as meeting whatever criterion the commission set. And they will vote then for delegates. They will have what we call an AHA, or a constitutional convention, and establish a sovereign nation, to which OHA has said, once that's done, we'll dump all of the assets of OHA into it, and they'll be off and running as the Kingdom of Hawaii, or whatever it may be called. Okay, now, I know you don't like the federal government, so do you like this solution better?
Absolutely not.
And why is that?
Talk about a golden parachute deal for especially those in play right now, especially at the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. But as you and I have suggested, first of all, since 2000 or 1999, the Akaka Bill happened because they were following the Constitution of the United States to address this matter. If we are to be in doubt, considered part of the United States, then is the Native Hawaiian people indigenous to the United States? Their answer has been yes. When we've asked for it, they keep saying that there's over 150 somewhat statutes and so forth that they've really never even produced. But that's their claim, that's their story. We've moved on with it. And yes, from 2000 to 2012, nothing but failures, costly failure, and then what? So now what? If you can't follow the constitutional process, what is there left to do? Obviously, the state is compelled, in its desperation, obviously, to try and come up with a vehicle that they can somehow sell to the federal government while trying to maintain that constitutionality concern. So what happens? They create a list, or a law, Act 195, saying we will like to convey a status onto the people that the Kanaka Maoli, Native Hawaiian, Maoli people, they are the indigenous people of the United States. Done. You have a certain status. But lo and behold, next on the legislation, we need a roll to be done so we know who these people are. And then ask the question, why do you need to know the roll? You and I know each other. We know we're Hawaiian.
Well, now let's take a look at what is required to be on that roll.
Exactly.
Isn't it, number one, you have to be able to prove that you have Hawaiian blood. Number two, you have to, in the eyes of the commission, be culturally connected. Number three, the commission added this one, you have to swear an affidavit. I affirm the unrelinquished sovereignty of the Hawaiian people. And although OHA, which administers the commission, says it's totally neutral, that doesn't sound very neutral to me.
Yeah.
And so in meeting these criteria, you can be on the roll. How successful has the roll been in getting Hawaiians to sign up? I understand they set a goal. They said there are 500,000 part Native Hawaiians across the country. They'll be happy if they get 250,000 as their goal. And in reality, how many people actually went and signed up for this, online or in person?
Well, when this law first came out, the people had looked at it because this was not the first attempt at some kind of creation. Kauinoa, Hahabai, there were other endeavors. So when they were specifically given the roll paper to sign and the signing or consenting to relinquishing of inherent rights, that was the first red flag for a lot of people in particular.
So you're saying this is different from the other roles, and in the past, one called Kauinoa was basically, as my daughter likes to put it, it was just to get an ID card and a free T-shirt.
But it was basically supposed to be a stamp on a paper saying, Mr. Akina, Mr. Makekau, here they are. No one can dispute it. You're standing up.
But they were not political documents.
Exactly.
They were not saying I relinquish the sovereignty of the United States,
or inherent rights in particular,
or anything like that.
Yeah.
So this new list, the the Native Hawaiian Royal Commission, known as Kana'i Olovalu, was signing people up who were to affirm that they acknowledge and affirm the unrelinquished sovereignty of the Hawaiian people. How many people actually really went through that process out of the 500,000 Hawaiians nationwide?
After the symptoms went through from the what again, from the same camp to the what am I exactly signing now to the all right, I'll go through it. The first report came something about I was at OHA when 9,000 was the first deadline.
That's
that they
worse than Obamacare.
pretty much. And it was there, and they were. I remember Mr. Namuo, who was the former administrator. He was the man in charge, and he was saying how numbers are disappointing, but again, this is not an easy endeavor. And they went on, asked OHA for another continuance, more money, of course.
That's right.
Time went on. But then, of course, our legislature decided in their own wise ways that obviously this wasn't happening. The people aren't buying it. So they created an Act 77 it was.
All right.
And they decided, we'll piggyback some legislation onto this legislation that will now take these so-called dead rolls of people who wanted the free T-shirt, and we'll say, hey, we're going to throw you over onto this roll. And thus, their list, of course, exponentially grew.
Now, the Native Hawaiian Royal Commission says that about 127,000 people have signed up for this. And in fact, the chairman of the commission, John Waihee III, former governor, has said in a press conference, we are now larger than any union in Hawaii. And so he says this is political clout over here. But isn't it the case that even of the 127,000, about 100,000 of them were just dumped on from prior roles that had nothing to do with
And when that happened,
nationhood?
you were hearing old boy Democratic rhetoric like, what a shot in the arm, my God. Because why? Here come the Hawaiian people in full force. And of course, everybody's standing there going, what are you talking about?
Well, you know, I have permission to tell you the story. I was on a radio show, and I asked people to call in. And I said, you know, if you signed up for a T-shirt and an ID card or a Kaui Noa, go to the Native Hawaiian Royal Commission site. Look up your name, put your birthday in and your name, and find out if your name was dumped into that list that says, I affirm the unrelinquished sovereignty of the Hawaiian people. So some people did. One woman did for her daughter, and her daughter just this week became Miss Maui. She discovered this. To her shock, her name is on the Native Hawaiian roll. And she says, I don't want to be there. I'm an American citizen. I'm proud to be Hawaiian, but I don't want to be on this political list. And so we inquired as to how she got into it. She said, well, I was applying for a scholarship sponsored by the Kamehameha schools to send non-Kamehameha students to college. And they told me I had to sign up for the earlier list, for the card and the T-shirt. And that's what I did. So apparently, my name was dumped onto this list. And call after call came in. People were angry hearing that their names were dumped. How do you feel about that? That if Hawaiians had been in a prior list, that their names are being dumped into this so-called nationhood list?
Unfortunately, the Native Hawaiian community gets is very emotional sometimes on this, so they don't necessarily review all the aspects. So when this action took place, a lot of anger, misrepresentation, theft, and downright names. People went to actually look at the list. They found out not only were their names stolen, some of the other family names, even deceased people, were on this list. So
we're getting to be more and more like Chicago.
Yeah. So the push then became to see what was happening, what was there, and actually the lobbying back onto the legislatures that made this happen. And the only remedy that came up was that the Royal Commission said, well, we have the website for you to verify, but we also provide you a link. So if you feel, and if we somehow stole, misrepresented you or whatnot, please enter your name, your database, and you may leave us.
In other words, you may opt out.
Yeah.
So they're going to take the aggressive action of dumping all those names in and maybe announcing in a classified ad or in some way
And
to
that
say
exonerates them.
You can opt out. So you don't buy that as a valid
But
means.
that somehow exonerates them from this action?
Now let's
That's absurd.
step back and see what this really means now. If you're talking about the fact that there are 500,000 or so, you will use their figures, OHA's figures, the Native Hawaiian roll, 500,000 of us Native Hawaiians across the nation. And if in reality, we remove the 100,000 that were dumped into the list, it leaves about 25,000 that actually signed up to be part of a separate sovereign nation. That's 5%. That means 95% of the 500,000 of the Native Hawaiians in the United States don't want to be a federal tribe, don't want to be part of the state's Kana'i Olovalu. What do you think that means?
I think that education in the whole spectrum of this has been flawed, misrepresented, and somewhat abused, because the people here who are being targeted, and let alone have done this, have been coming back and forth and expressing what the representative or what the pamphlet or whatever the false hope story that was given to them. They're finding that the only commonality they're sharing is that there's a certain path of misdirection here. People that I know that are mostly furious about it is that they've been led to believe that signing up, verifying yourself, moving for this delegation, because John Wahe'e them and the commissioners have quoted this, I've been asked, infiltrate. You like the independent model, you should infiltrate, take over, become a delegate, swing it so that this thing could possibly go your way. So a lot of people who will think that this is going to somehow return the independent nation or the independent kingdom are in this thing going, that's what we're going to do.
Well, let's take that claim, that you could just sign up and be part of the process and help influence it. And OHA has now publicized a campaign that says we are neutral. We're simply facilitating a process. Is this Native Hawaiian Role Commission neutral? Is it simply saying we're facilitating discussion between people?
No.
Or is there something, what is really at the heart of it?
Because the financial backing, which is at this core, is coming from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. So you cannot negate the fact that what would be the office's prerogatives, or in this case, we know policies. Their policy is quite simple. They support and have always supported federal recognition. So how can you have a neutral basis while supposedly your people are going to be going into convention? It's a predetermined fact.
Well, we've pretty much established that whatever is going on with this Native Hawaiian role, it's not creating the so-called tribe, because the tribe is not signing up. And therefore, the goal really can't be to create a reservation full of Hawaiians. So I want to ask you, when we come back, what are the powers that be trying to accomplish through federal recognition or state recognition of a Native Hawaiian entity? And let's close today by two questions. Number one, what are they trying to accomplish? And number two, how do we move forward for real progress for Hawaii's people, all of them, Hawaiians and non-Hawaiians? I'm Keli'i Akina, talking with Kealii Makekau about some of these most important Hawaiian issues that are relevant to everyone here in our state, but you're getting an inside look at the thinking of a very well-respected Hawaiian activist today. And I thank him and you as our audience. We'll be right back on ThinkTech Hawaii's E Hana Kākou weekly program right after this.
Hi, I'm Donna Blanchard, and I host the show Center Stage on the ThinkTech Hawaii digital series right here every Wednesday from 2 to 3 Hawaii time. I would really love to have you watch the show and see what we do here. I talk with some of the most amazing people, artists, most of them, all of them involved in some sort of artistic process. And our goal here on the show is to dig into that artistic process, and you would not believe what some people say, what some people do, what people go through to express. And these are people who have to express somehow, and I find that infinitely interesting. Not only that they have to express, but how they end up doing it. I really hope that you will watch the show and enjoy talking with some of these people the same way that I do. Thanks, and I hope to see you soon on Center Stage on the ThinkTech Hawaii digital series, Wednesdays from 2 to 3. See you soon.
Aloha and welcome back to E Hana Kākou. We're here every week on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network, and I want to say thank you to Jay Fidel, producer of the ThinkTech Hawaii programs. We do about 25 hours a week of original content from Hawaii that goes across the world. Visit the website at thinktechhawaii.com. My guest today, Kealii Makekau, and I are talking about one of the most divisive issues taking place in our state now, and that's the issue of federal recognition of Native Hawaiians, which has now shifted to state recognition of a Native Hawaiian nation through the Native Hawaiian Role Commission. Kealii, we pretty much have established this is not about creating an island full of Hawaiians as a reservation per se. In fact, it's really not about even succeeding at enrolling people who would be a tribe. It was such a dismal result has been tolerated, that a tiny percentage of actual Hawaiians have signed up to be part of this. So the real question is, who benefits and how do they benefit from getting federal recognition or state recognition of Hawaiians as a governing entity?
Well, to be actually quite blunt and more on the independence model, this has all come about because of, again, 100 years have gone by. You have the apology bill. So there's a lot of international pressure going on right now on the United States, let alone the state of Hawaii, to ramify the situation. So after the congressional chance or Hail Mary failed, and I always tell everybody it should have passed. You had Danny Noyan and Dana Kaka. These are the powerful, the T-Rexes on Wall Street, but it didn't work. Now we are left with what's happening, and I see what we're getting at now is that you see that the Democratic Party in particular and some of these old boy network guys have crafted a way to enable the solving of the overthrow as they kind of do it, but setting up a new conglomerate in which a tribe-like status or government body, government or a nation, domestic dependent nation body will be there in which to operate out of.
When you talk about this conglomerate, you're talking about probably the bringing together of the Hawaiian lands,
Trusts,
the
yeah.
trusts,
Yep.
the resources, and trying to create this super organization of tribal leaders without a tribe. And some of the things I was trying to put together just recently, a shopping list. What would the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, Native Hawaiian Royal Commission's shopping list be? One of the things that I'm sure they want is the ability to develop the land holdings they have without zoning rules. This last legislative session, remember, down there at Kaka'ako, there are 31 acres and so forth. They didn't want a zoning change. They wanted an exemption for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs from the 200-foot ceiling for buildings to 400 feet. If they had this sovereignty, they would be able to be land developers that didn't have to pay attention to the state and city and county land use ordinances.
Moreover, on that point, it would be a political question. Would an Indian tribe or a sovereign domestic nation be held accountable to laws like from the HCDA?
There you go. So the whole question of whether they are development laws or even other kinds of laws, could they get away with the violation of American laws on their sovereign soil? Would they have sovereign immunity?
Would now be limited to Kaka'ako, or could we now start to press into ceded lands, undeveloped resources from which they're...
Well, you mentioned that, and here in Hawaii we estimate that nobody knows, there's never been an audit,
Yeah,
but we estimate that there are 1.8 million acres of ceded
They're
land.
out there somewhere, yeah.
Which actually is about half the land mass of Hawaii. So what you're suggesting is that they will lay claim to that, as OHA has already laid claim. And what's interesting is I looked at the last version of the Akaka bill, which failed, just to see what the shopping list was. What has OHA spent nearly $20 million, if not more, lobbying over a decade? And what's in that shopping list? One of the things in the last version of the Akaka bill was the ability to practice eminent domain. In other words, to condemn land that they claimed belongs to them. Now, can you imagine that here on this island, saying part of those ceded lands is our land and we're going to condemn it? Here's another one. Tell me what you think about this. I mention this not because I have any problem with people gambling or smoking or drinking. People have that individual right. But when a corrupt agency becomes responsible for and controls gambling, one of the shopping list items on the last Akaka bill was the ability to conduct gambling operations, casinos, in the 48 states that have them, and then when Hawaii's legislature can be persuaded to allow it to conduct that here in Hawaii. Would that be good for Hawaii?
Well, personally, I've always been a proponent for the individual, rights.
Right, individual right.
People have asked me, even though, running for office or whatever, do you support gambling? I said, I think right now Hawaii it's a little premature. I do support things like a statewide lottery system, or because a lot of states enjoy multi-gaming lotteries, Powerball and stuff like that, but they're under the state's authority.
Would you like the Office of Hawaiian Affairs and the Native Hawaiian Royal Commission, let's throw in DHHL, Department of Hawaiian Homelands, to be the authority operating the gambling industry of Hawaii?
Right now, absolutely not. They have a hard enough time running their own affairs and keep blaming outside interference or other obstacles. But from the state auditor report comes out, I believe he even had an attorney general Mr.
Michael Lilly, a
Lilly
former
there.
Attorney General,
Even
has
he
been
commented on
our
it that
guest.
the nation building process was a costly failure. There's no oversight, that's why. This agency in particular, OHA, is allowed to run its course and even being told what the prediction of the years that are ahead. You have a Republican Congress that is upholding the constitutionality. So what are your plans? Simple, we plan to go 4 more years, and it's absolutely absurd at a hefty cost at something like $2.5 to $3 million alone, just on that fee. We're not talking about lobbyists, plane fare, all the other entitlements. You would look at that and go, who are the decision makers here? What are they doing? This is one of those Warren Buffett debit
Sure.
cards that you have, and we don't have those too much, you know?
You know,
So-
we're heading to the end of the program, and I think that I would like to explore at another time your and my different vision as to how to move forward. And I think that our visions may not necessarily line up, but I think that in general, number one, we both agree that the government has to get out of the business of creating a sovereign nation, whether it's the federal government or whether it's the state government. And that's a tremendously broad area where conservatives, where Native Hawaiian activists, where I think most people in this state can come together and need to stand up and say to OHA, say to Native Hawaiian Royal Commission, say to the Department of Interior, stop this nonsense and quit wasting your money on all of this political work. What could OHA do if it were not spending this multi-million-dollar budget on its political agenda?
They have their mandate that has been there since the time of its creation. That's to address and try to empower the conditions of Native Hawaiians and Hawaiians alike. How from 1978, 1979, especially when you move it along the timeline, then you get to 2000, how did it become a nation building of erecting what they keep promoting, a sovereign nation, and by that very definition is false. They have been advocating and wishing for an independent, a domestic dependent tribe similar to Native Americans, which have limitations. But
well, you know, what's interesting
that's
is
the po- yeah.
you go to OHA's website or the Native Hawaiian Royal Commission's website, you'll be hard-pressed to find anything about eliminating poverty and homelessness in Hawaii on that website, but you'll be confronted virtually every other page with signing up for the Native Hawaiian political role to be a sovereign government.
The sad part is it's there. I mean, they've actually, in their mission statement and so forth, the program, the lifelines are there. It's just that, I've also, the corpus of their budgets, let alone their trust, have been diverted to this crapshoot, which they have snake eyes pretty much from 2000, and they're going to continue to do it until I keep telling everybody to either get rid of the leadership, you know, use your authority, vote for new leadership or so forth, and do it. But the Native Hawaiian people have pretty much, a lot of them have said with the DOI meetings that we are not relinquishing our inherent rights until the sovereignty issue in particular is addressed on an open field, on a playing level, viewed under the auspice, especially of international law, which benefits the U.S. and the other violated party, the Kingdom of Hawaii. Then we will have a fully formed discussion, and then we can see where self-determination goes.
Let's dabble just a little bit, and we can't give it the attention it deserves, in understanding the history of the transition from the Kingdom of Hawaii in 1893 into becoming part of the United States today. There's no question about it. There were injustices, there are hurts, and so forth. Do you think it's possible to solve them all, or at some point or another there needs to be a measure of forgiveness and constructive moving ahead?
I think the action was put in place. I think the problem is that the actions of honorable men or people in this action, when it took place from the time of when President Cleveland got involved, addressed the matter, and then when another person came in, as we see today, another executive officer comes in and goes, well, that's great, removes the paperwork from his desk to the side, goes, that was not in my administration, so I have no knowledge, and I will carry on. And thus this...
He lost the hard drive.
Pretty much. And it's been going on. And then 100 years went by, President Clinton comes in, admits to the world that America's involvement was here. So what we have to reconcile this has always been in the best of both high contracting parties, and was called for by the United States in particular. And moreover, what I stress to everybody as this is that the United States has said, or never even said, that this undertaking could not be a part of it. If we were, people, advocates like myself would be arrested because our Constitution calls for treason implications. They've called for a dialogue, or at least in which a process in which reconciliation can happen. However, the confusion and the divisiveness that has happened in today's world is the state of Hawaii's usurpation of these talks by saying we will step in the middle, we can solve this, we're going to turn them into a tribe, golden parachutes for me and my friends, and lo and behold, the people can reap the benefit. We'll put them on EBT cards or whatever like that, and everybody's going to live happily ever after. And that's the God's honest truth. But instead, that dialogue is not happening, and
Absolutely.
that's what we're calling for.
And everyone who has seen the Native American Indian model imposed upon people realizes that it's not about the tribe, but it's about the tribal leaders who get rich, who remain unaccountable without the meeting of the needs of the people.
Some tribes, to be honest, I mean, I've been to some tribes, there's 500 something tribes. Some tribes have done very well and have done the right thing. But like, again, the fault of men.
Sure.
Not everybody does that. So you go to a place that is very well constructed, like the Tuleap tribe, they provide very well for their people. They do, but then and it's such in a magnitude of position here, but we're not ready for that. We're not even receiving the proper education for that. But we're not even getting that package. We're getting some similar, and again, it's a conglomerate of these old boy people that are setting themselves up for something that really only the think tank people can actually see right now, because it's coming, and they're going full steam ahead of it, so much that they're trying to bypass our U.S. Constitution and go with this president. I'll make no bones, I'm not necessarily a big fan of him, but they're trying to work out an agreement that to bypass the Constitution by a tribe, by executive order, and I don't know if that's ever been done before.
Well, it's not. In fact, I think that you are warming the heart of many of our listeners and viewers now in pointing out to one of the problems taking place here. It's not just a local issue. There is the federal issue, the issue at the national level of an egregious overreach by the executive branch of government, an excessive use of executive power. For one thing, only Congress can acknowledge another nation and so forth. The federal government, through the president, can't acknowledge, let alone create a nation. And that's the fundamental constitutional problem we have over here. Today, you and I didn't really talk about the constitutional problems. We did talk, however, about the problem of the efforts of the state of Hawaii through OHA and the Native Hawaiian Royal Commission, and I thank you for that. There's more to say, more to talk about, and I hope we'll be doing that more often, Kealii. I want to thank you for being with me today. I appreciate it greatly. Kealii Makekau, thanks for sharing with us. Well, my guest, Kealii Makekau, has shared what we like to call mana'o, what's on his heart and on his mind. And if you've really not sat down with some of the leaders of the Hawaiian activist movement who are championing the cause of Native Hawaiians today, I hope at the very least you'll recognize that many of them, like Kealii Makekau, are intelligent, well-reflective, and understand what is wrong with government when it intervenes in areas that it has no business intervening in, when it does things that are so unconstitutional that they are both onerous and a violation of the law. And in that respect, I'm glad for my friendship with Kealii Makekau, because together we can fight for individual liberty, free markets, and limited accountable government. I'm Keli'i Akina with the Grassroots Institute, signing off for ThinkTech Hawaii and the Ehana Kako Weekly Program. We'll see you next week. Aloha.